Okay, this is going to be a recap of WrestleMania week for 2025. In most cases, you would call this a weekend, but because of, the WWE has taken over the weekend with the two-night event, I think it's more appropriate just to title this the whole week, WrestleMania week. AEW and some of the independent wrestling companies had to kind of get their best shows in, before the weekend started, for obvious reasons. So yeah, man, after this list is over, this is going to be a list of the top 25 matches of the week. And then after this, I'll touch on some of the essential shows and definitely want to preview the big TNA show next week, as well as Ring of Honor, Supercard of Honor, which will be next week as well on May 2nd. But let's get right into the list. At number 25, top 25 matches of the week. I'm going to go with Io Sky taking on Stephanie Valkyr. This is on Raw. This kind of ended in a no finish, but while it lasted, it was a hell of a treat. I think Adam Pearce was great. He acted like he was going to, not allow the match to take place. But we got Io Sky and Stephanie Valkyr, the WWE versus the NXT champions. It was sweet while it lasted, but the NXT girls broke it up. But yeah, hopefully they go back to this because this was a hell of a treat. At number 24. This was at the very beginning of the week. This is from DEFY, from the Streets of Rage show. This is Gabe Kidd taking on Calvin Tankman. From a wrestling standpoint, this is probably Gabe Kidd's best wrestled match of the whole week. I mean, it really was. I thought this was awesome stuff. If you haven't seen Calvin Tankman yet, he was on Bloodsport a couple years ago. He's a really fatter black dude, but he's good though. He's still good. I thought him and Gabe Kidd had an awesome match. I actually like Gabe's match against Josh Barnett. If you watch that match back, it's very slow paced, at the beginning. But I thought Josh really did a good job of just making Gabe look like he was, sharp, just really sharp and really quicker to the punch, and stayed away from all of Josh's offense. So I kind of appreciate that looking back on it. It was a little bit short. It was a little bit abrupt with Gabe Kidd beating Josh Barnett with the pile driver. But if that didn't satisfy you, the Calvin Tankman match, I thought it was really awesome, actually. So I got that at 24. At number 23, we got Natty Neidhart taking on Yamashita from Bloodsport. This was the sleeper of the night. It was short, but man, Natalya Neidhart, she was really the surprise, I think, of Bloodsport. Just the presentation, even some of the stuff that she had on the ring attire. She actually had Low Key Legend on her hoodie, so that was really interesting, and I just thought she brought it. The feistiness and the aggressiveness in the post match was definitely memorable. So if you haven't seen Natty Neidhart in Bloodsport, I thought that was probably the highlight of the show in some ways. At number 22, we have LA Knight taking on Jacob Fatu from WrestleMania. Exciting match. I thought this was like I think they got off to a little bit of a slow start, but man, like the last couple of minutes, were some of the most exciting stuff from WrestleMania, I thought. Jacob Fatu, the new United States champion. At number 21, we have Nick Wayne taking the Ring of Honor Television Championship from Commander. This is actually from Collision. Definitely the highlight of that Collision show. So Nick Wayne, satisfies Christian Cage. Christian actually told him, go win the ROH TV title. And he does it. I believe the youngest guy ever to win any ROH title. So congrats to Nick Wayne. Looks like he's going to be at Supercard of Honor. Him and Commander had a really exciting match. That's at number 21. At number 20, we have Mance Warner taking on Gabe Kidd from Spring Break. I thought the crowd was kind of lousy here. But I will say this was really brutal stuff. Gabe Kidd, gave Mance some vicious slaps here. There's a screwdriver spot where Mance Warner is just, squirting blood. I guess you're not allowed to say squirting anymore. It's like a bad word. But hey, Mance Warner, took a beating here. Very physical, very bloody. I thought it was good. I just think the crowd at Spring Break was not great for the most part. I thought the second half of the show they were kind of lousy until the Sabu match. At number 19, we got Konosuke Takeshita taking on Mao. This is from DDT. DDT runs Las Vegas. Good stuff. I mean, I didn't see a lot of the DDT shows. I just saw like the triple main events of both nights. But yeah, I mean, if you're a Takeshita fan, I would definitely recommend checking this out. I think Mal's a hell of a talent. I like the way he kind of uses the referee to get leverage. So he's a slick wrestler. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not as good as Takeshita versus you know what. But if you're a Takeshita fan and you know, if you like the guy and you want to see him in his home promotion, I would definitely check it out. At number 18, we got Gunther versus Jey Uso from WrestleMania. They open up WrestleMania with the bang. I think if you could look past, you know, the situation with the championship match going first and just enjoy the match. I always enjoyed the Gunther and Jey Uso matches, and this was definitely another strong effort from them. I thought it was a fun match. Number 17. This is the main event from the WrestleCon Mark Hitchcock Memorial, which was not very well received. I did not get through the whole show, but I did see the main event. I saw some of the stuff on the show. The main event was actually Zack Sabre Jr., Bad Dude Tito, Shane Hayes taking on Flip Gordon, Michael Oku, and Hechicero from the WrestleCon main event here. Yeah, and this actually ended up being on Triller. So what does that tell you? I just think you know, not enough confidence in people to actually order this show from High Spots. So Triller was able to acquire the show as part of the collective. And yeah, I mean, I think this match was good, though. I mean, Zach is in a tag match here. You know, I thought him and Michael Oku, you know, rocked the house. I thought they were awesome. Flip Gordon, the crowd booed the shit out of Flip Gordon. I'm not sure why. You know, maybe too much flippity-floppity offense from him. I mean, I thought he busted his ass, but the fans just really weren't into him. They were really into Bad Dude Tito. You know, Hechicero blended in really well with, you know, Zach. I thought this was a good main event. I thought it was good. But definitely, I think the Flip Gordon stuff kind of had a negative aura about it, and that's why it's not higher. Number 16, we got Mercedes taking on Athena to open up that great Dynamite show, Spring Breakthrough. You know, Mercedes was treated like a legend here, you know, in Boston, the home of the Celtics. I think it was Shivani. I think he said that this was Mercedes' best title defense so far. It's definitely not her best match so far. You know, you get the point, though. Athena is a hell of a talent. You know, it's one of the better workers that Mercedes has been able to work with since she's been in AEW. So, yeah, I would definitely say it's arguably her best match on television so far. I would say not as good as the Statlander matches, but I thought you had an awesome finish here. There's a spot with the LED board where the lights go out, which is pretty cool. And then the Meteora finish. It was pretty good, man. I just love Athena, man. She is an awesome worker. This had moments where, you know, it dragged a little bit, so I don't think I wouldn't say it's Mercedes' best match in AEW, but yeah, I mean, it was definitely an awesome match to open up, you know, what might go down as maybe the best Dynamite ever, surprisingly. At number 15, we got Damian Priest taking on Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania, the Sin City Street Fight. I thought it was great. I just think it could have gotten more time. I think looking back on it, I would have switched this with the Logan Paul match in AJ, and I think you would have had a better show. But hey, you know, I really didn't even appreciate, you know, how much effort went into, you know, the booking here with the Money in the Bank, and you know, them screwing each other at the Rumble and at the Elimination Chamber, with Priest screwing over McIntyre in both cases. So I thought it was good, man. I thought this had a lot of intensity. And it was a very satisfying match, and, you know, puts Drew right back into... It might end up being Drew versus Jey Uso. We have to see how things play out on SmackDown. But at number 14, this is from Spring Break. And this is Atticus Cougar taking on Fuego del Sol. Okay, so I actually saw the promo for this during Bloodsport, and it really got my attention. I think the feud was good. If you haven't seen Atticus Cougar yet, he's kind of like a rebel. He's one of these guys. He looks like he might be in jail if he wasn't wrestling. Very similar to a, you know, I don't want to say Joey Janela, who's Nick Gage. You know, kind of that type of, you know, look. And the feud was good though. I mean, Fuego del Sol. You know, he got on the mic. He spoke very, very good English. I mean, it was about, you know, hiding underneath the mask, and I just thought the feud was good. You know, the stipulation with their careers on the line and Fuego del Sol's mask on the line. The match delivered. You know, the feud delivered. You know, the unmasking. And the boots coming off was definitely a nice little payoff. So Atticus Cougar, great weekend for him. He was actually part of the WWE ID tournament. That wasn't that well received, but this is more up his alley. He was allowed to just, do some crazy stuff out there. The finish wasn't great. I mean, that brain hemorrhage finish, I thought it was a cool move, but at the same time, you still had, some of the fat guys that were on their side here. I thought that kind of took away from the match. But if you could look past that, I think the stipulation and some of the action here, Fuego del Sol's 450 through the door on the outside was dope. I mean, there were some beautiful springboard DDTs. Fuego del Sol is a hell of a talent, but Atticus Cougar, was definitely the star of the show on the mic and in the feud as well. It was a good feud, definitely a good feud. This felt to me like it was the most personal thing of the whole collective, to be honest with you. So definitely check it out. At number 13, we got Luke Jacobs taking on Michael Oku from Progress. So this is actually the show that main evented Progress. Luke Jacobs is the champion. He goes over Michael Oku. Yeah, I thought this was good. I thought, I haven't seen a lot of Luke Jacobs, but, you get to see how good he is here. He's very stiff. Good execution in terms of being a nice, strong wrestler. A lot of good clotheslines from him. I thought Oku busted his ass here. I thought this was an exciting main event. The Progress show doesn't seem like it had a lot of juice to it on the undercard, but I did see the main event. And, I would say if you're an Oku fan, he's been delivering for years, and this was no exception. This is definitely a quality main event. It was cool to learn about Luke Jacobs as well, the Progress champion. Number 12, we got Axiom and Frazier taking on Hank and Tank from NXT. Yeah, this was good, man. This surprised me. First time getting to see Hank and Tank. They actually win the tag team titles. Extremely entertaining match. The Hank and Tank dudes are really, really fun to watch. And they were good. At first, I was just like, who the fuck are these guys? But if you actually give them a chance, man, they're pretty awesome. And Axiom and Frazier did some incredible moves here. The Spanish Fly into the Phoenix Splash, kick out, one of the best sequences of WrestleMania weekend. So that was the sleeper of the NXT show. Next up, we got Braun Breaker taking on Penta, Dominic Mysterio, and Finn Balor from WrestleMania. Dominic Mysterio gets cheered as a heel here. So who would have ever thought, man, that Dom would be getting cheered as a heel? He's definitely come a long way. But hey, man, the match is exciting as hell. I talked about it already, but one of the better things that the WWE gave us from a crowd reaction standpoint. And Breaker bodied the hell out of Carlito through that table. At number 10. This is going to shock the shit out of some people. And this is the reason why I'm doing it, because, even during the match here, they were like, I know like nobody's going to end up seeing this. There's so much shit going on during WrestleMania weekend, but holy shit, this is incredible. This really surprised me, man. So this is the Lucha Solos. The name of this tag team, I'm going to butcher it, but it's Lucha Solos versus Los Hermanos de la Jungla. Featuring one of the dudes was actually named Panther. So I could be butchering that name. So this is actually from the Dragon Gate USA and the PWR Gator Revolution. There was 2 Dragon Gate shows. One was part of the collective, and then there was another show with PWR, which was in a different venue, a smaller venue. But the second Dragon Gate show, the Gator Revolution show, it was awesome. I would definitely say it was one of the better shows of the weekend. If you haven't seen it yet, the Lucha Solo dudes really impressed me here. One of the dudes is a little bit on the fatter side, but he was incredible here. So just incredible action. If you like action, if you like, just a great wrestling match, this is definitely something right up your alley. So definitely check it out. The Lucha Solo dudes were extremely impressive here. At number 9, we got Samoa Joe teaming up with Shibata and Powerhouse Hobbs to take on the Death Riders. Moxie's actually substituting for the injured Pac here for the Trios Championships. Holy shit. They were able to follow, in the main event here. They actually closed the show. Man. So, man, I mean, look, this ended up being one of the best endings to a Dynamite ever. The whole locker room comes out and they celebrate. Very reminiscent of, when the Bruder Shaft went down in Chikara with BDK. Very, very reminiscent of that. But yeah, it's just kind of a foreshadowing of what it's going to be like if Moxley ever loses the belt. So it's just one of those things. Like, I think if you're patient enough, eventually we'll get there. And, maybe once this Death Riders thing is finally over, I think you're going to get, more of these moments. But yeah, I mean, just them, taking the trios belts off of the Death Riders came off great. The match was beautiful. They booked Joe awesome here. This definitely sets up a Joe versus Moxley match, hopefully at Double or Nothing. They usually do like a, Anarchy in the Arena at Double or Nothing, but holy shit, man. This is a great main event. I didn't expect it to be this good, but man, the crowd was incredible here. The crowd was actually chanting AEW as the show goes off the air. So, man, awesome match. At number 8, we have Stephanie Vakir taking on Julia, Jordan Grace, and Jada Parker. This is the 4-way from NXT. Yeah, I thought this was good. I think Jordan Grace really fit in well here. This is why it's working, man, because you got other girls in the division that are pretty much just as good as her. I thought you had a really impressive performance from Jada Parker. I prefer this over the women's ladder match. I thought this had great talent, great depth, just exciting action. Stephanie does go over. And I'll tell you, man, when she does the... God, I don't even want to say the move, but when she does the move where she wraps up the girl's skull and crushes her on the mat, it comes. I mean, it's really one of the moves that really gets the fans into it. I mean, when Shelly used to do it back in the day, it works so much better when a woman does it. That's the easiest way to put it. So yeah, Steph had another great match right there. I thought this was awesome. Jordan Grace, I thought she was great, but at the same time, it almost feels like she's still getting into like a rhythm a little bit, which is good. It feels like she's still developing. And I was under the impression that she should just go to the WWE, but I was wrong. I think she's fitting in well in NXT. At number 7, we have Zack Sabre Jr. Taking on Jonathan Gresham from Bloodsport. I totally forgot that these guys had a match at Final Battle 2018, and I believe this is actually their 6th match. I would imagine these are like a various amounts of different promotions, promotions all around the world. Maybe Progress, maybe WXW. I mean, we could be here forever if I had to look up all the different promotions. I wish I had done that before the video. But hey, apparently this is 3-3 at this time. We have Zack Sabre Jr. Defeating Jonathan Gresham in overtime. I thought it was an awesome match. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely check it out. These two guys are, made for each other. I thought this was the best match from Bloodsport. I kind of knew it was going to be the best match, but it probably should have went last. I think this probably should have got the main event, and maybe you could have given them some even more time in overtime right there. But at number 6, we got Obafemi taking on Trick Williams and Javon Evans. This is from NXT's, Stand and Deliver, the main event. Awesome stuff. You get an all-black main event in NXT for the 2nd year in a row. Obafemi continues to dominate. You could just see Trick Williams' improvement, since last year. And Javon Evans, he's so athletic that he just doesn't even look like he's breaking a sweat out there. He just looks so young, so flexible. He doesn't have to worry about tearing his Achilles or, spraining a knee because... when you're that young, you could pretty much get away with it. So that's just how it came off. But Obafemi, he is a great champion. I have no idea, and that's one of the things that really stands out here. These are, collegiate athletes. They keep on mentioning the SEC. It's just one of those things where, I don't think you need to grow up being the biggest fan. A lot of the reason why guys don't become fans is, Jalen Brunson even said, once he started taking basketball serious, there's really not a lot of time, to invest in watching wrestling, and especially when you're battling in the SEC, the Southeast Conference as a football player, it's probably very difficult, but when they commit to you and you're going to get paid at the end of the day and it becomes your life, you could develop the passion later on. And I think that's what's happening now, especially within this crop of NXT talent, with all these guys, especially Obafemi. I think he is awesome. He has a great look And I think he's great on the mic as well. I love his like Nigerian accent. So awesome match right there. Next, at number 5, we have the Gate of Revolution main event. This is from Dragon Gate and PWR. This is the Zebrats, led by Shun Skywalker, to take on Ben-K Hio, who is actually like a, somewhat of like a male stripper, almost like a pretty boy male stripper, but he was impressive here. And then we got KZY, who used to be friends with Akira Tozawa, who used to be more of like a rapper. Now he's taking himself a little bit more seriously. So if you haven't seen the 6-man Dragon Gate match, I thought it was awesome. I mean, there's a lot of heelish stuff like from Skywalker that really took away, I think, from the weekend. It's very story driven. They're trying to ruin Dragon Gate, almost like the Cena situation. But, once they got back into the ring and once this thing got going, they even said it on commentary, like, this is why you watch Dragon Gate. It's because of action like this. Ben-K really reminds me of Shingo, if you haven't seen him yet. Very reminiscent of Shingo by his execution and by the way he looks. He looks like Shingo's like younger brother. And I'll tell you what, Skywalker, when he takes this shit serious, he's really fucking good. He's good as hell. So he was great here. I thought this was a great main event, to be completely honest with you. It shocked the shit out of me of how good it was. I'll talk a little bit more about the first Dragon Gate USA show, which I'll talk about it later. But let's wrap up this list right here. Number 4, we got Zack Sabre Jr. taking on Timothy Thatcher. This is from DEFY, the Streets of Rage show. This is actually from Seattle. I'm going to count it anyway. So Zack and Timothy Thatcher, not going to be everybody's cup of tea. If you find Bryan Danielson boring, you'll probably find this match boring. I know there's some people out there that, feel like Danielson's, independent style wasn't for them. But yeah, this is just grown man's wrestling. I mean, this is a violent, they said this on commentary, this is like a violent twister contest. That's how this kind of came off right here. So yeah, lots of great submission wrestling on the mat, and once again, you had a lot of slaps. You had a lot of, stiff slaps and stiff strikes. Once these guys got pissed off, you had some great rope breaks as well. There was some moments here where Zack looked like he was going to pass out. From Timothy Thatcher's, stiffness. But man, I mean, the submission work, the mat wrestling, the grappling, the finish with Zack actually, locking in the cross arm breaker. When Timothy exposed his arm on the leg scissors, was a beautiful finish. So, yeah, these two guys are made for each other. I can't get enough of these guys. So Zack Sabre Jr. defeats Timothy Thatcher. Does not get the main event, though. This actually goes on in the middle of the show, but it's definitely worth checking out. I thought it was, probably the highlight of the whole weekend, like from a submission wrestling standpoint. At number 3, we got Bianca Belair taking on Io Sky and Rhea Ripley to open up WrestleMania. Yeah, I would not disagree about the 5-star rating. I thought it was that good. I actually said, like, when they were going to book this match or had the idea of it, I thought it makes all the sense in the world. It could be a 5-star match, and you could appeal to multiple demographics across the world, and I thought it was awesome. Definitely the highlight of WrestleMania Night 2. At number 2, we got CM Punk taking on Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. This is the main event of WrestleMania Night 1. It did not disappoint. This was definitely the better main event, definitely the more satisfying main event. And we got Paul Heyman siding with Seth Rollins, which is very predictable, but, it's unrealistic to, turn Roman back heel. Punk is definitely in a nice groove right now. I think Seth is the one that needed the heel turn, and the match definitely delivered. I just thought the creativity, the sequencing, and yeah, I want to shout out. They've done this before. Seth and Roman, the spear into the pedigree, but this was the best one that they ever did. It just looked flawless, the transition. At number 1, we got Will Ospreay taking on Takeshita. This is from AEW Spring Breakthrough, the Owen Hart tournament. I think everyone's expecting Ospreay to win the tournament, so no surprise that he went over here. But yeah, I love their match from Revolution. I know some guys thought it was the match of the year last year, but if you love the Revolution match, I think this is even better. This was in front of this felt like a very hot independent wrestling crowd. It was a smaller arena here in Boston, but it just worked. And I mean, just some of Takeshita's forearms to counter the Os Cutter, were incredible. And some of the no selling with the the running blade into the the wheelbarrow suplex or Takeshita's tilt-a-whirl slam. I'm saying the name wrong, but man, I can't do it justice. This was incredible. It's got to be up there with one of the best Dynamite matches ever. I think it was that good. And the crowd gave it the respect it deserves. Okay, just some quick thoughts on the NXT Stand and Deliver show. So they actually run this during, early in the day, early in the morning. I guess it aired on the East Coast. This is actually from T-Mobile Arena. They sell, I think we all know by now, they sell these in packages. But yeah, I think the NXT show was good. A lot of people think it was the, from the WWE side of things, think it was the best event of the weekend. That's one of the only times we could say that since they repackaged NXT. Since the black and gold days. I think NXT has had some highlights. I thought Heat Wave last summer was, the best NXT show in years. And then on the CW, they've definitely had some good shows. They ran the Roadblock show at Madison Square Garden. If anyone got to see that show, I still think that show, like from start to finish, is better than this, but it has commercials. It's not exactly a pay-per-view format. But yeah, it was cool to see Ricky Starks on the show. This is Ricky Saints. Actually defeats Ethan Page. Ethan Page is going on the main event, the TNA Rebellion show in a triple threat against Joe Henry. But I thought it was a good match for Ricky. Ricky took an incredible table bump here. He wins with the Rochambeau. Not a great match, but it was solid stuff. It's cool. The cool thing about this is it's two former AEW guys that got a lot of TV time, before a lot of the bigger names came into the company, and now they're trying to fight their way back up in NXT. So it's definitely a cool match. And I think there's a lot of value in NXT being on, the CW. I was just working out the other night in the clubhouse, and then they have a huge TV in the lobby. And I just popped the TV on because I was going to watch some of the playoffs. And, they actually had on Channel 11, the CW, and in the ring is Ricky Starks. So I still think there's a lot of value in network television. So I think NXT has a really, really good television deal right now, and it should definitely get them a lot more exposure. So, definitely looking forward to great things from Ricky Starks, Ricky Saints. It's going to take me a while to get used to the new name, but Ricky is a hell of a talent. He had the match with MJF at Winter Is Coming, and he actually main evented a Grand Slam against Hobbs. But, you feel, and then he had the Bryan Danielson Classic at All Out. But, I feel like he's one of the guys that, should have definitely been utilized a little bit better in AEW. But it's just tough. It's tough when you have that much talent. I don't think it should be a knock on Tony Khan at all. But it's a hell of an opportunity, for Ricky. Like I talked about before, I thought that Fraxium match, Axiom and Nathan Frazier against Hank and Tank, was really impressive, really entertaining stuff. Like the Hank and Tank team really shocked the shit out of me by their tag work, and they were just a fun team to watch, man. And that was a great title change. The women's ladder match, not really my thing. We've seen a lot of these ladder matches over the past. I think they did one at Battleground, and they did one at Stand and Deliver a couple years ago. I thought this was okay. It definitely had like some creative spots. It definitely had like some unique moments. You got Sol Ruka actually winning this thing. Kalani Jordan's in the match as well. So you saw just great flexibility and some great creativity. I thought Lola Vice had a great showing. Tia Hale, Zarya, Izzy Dame got booed. They booed the shit out of her, but I thought all the women did good. It's just tough. It's tough to go back to this. I just don't think this has a lot of replay value. But hey, you definitely had some awesome athleticism out there. Sol Ruka winning. Just by the way it came off, I thought it was the right call. And then we have the 6-man tag match. We got the D'Angelo family out there featuring Shannon Lorenzo, Tony D'Angelo, and Luca Crisafino coming out there with Adriana Rizzo. I love that name. All right, yeah, so she definitely looks like Adriana from The Sopranos if you haven't seen her. And then Rizzo is like the most Italian name. That was my Uncle Sal's last name as well. Sal Rizzo. But Yeah, and they're taking on the Dark State. You saw the Dark State attack Javon Evans at Roadblock in the at that show at the Paramount Theater. So yeah, I was impressed with the Dark State team. I thought they were cool. The Saquon dude is definitely talented. I think there's room for improvement. It almost feels like another, Death Riders, another weird stable. But, the story of this match is the turn. Shading Lorenzo actually turns on Tony D'Angelo. They tease it happening, they tease it not happening, and then it actually does happen. So it was a nice little tease, and when it did happen, it felt good. Lorenzo got a lot of heat. Yeah, I thought it was an entertaining 6-man tag. I think the turn is the more memorable thing, more memorable than the actual match. But the match was actually solid though. And then next up you got Stephanie Vakir taking on Julia, Jada Parker, and Jordan Grace in the 4-way match. I thought it was cool. So I'm seeing a little bit of criticism here. I think some people would have preferred it to be 1-on-1, but I think the 4-way was good. I think it was just a great way to showcase all these girls, for WrestleMania weekend. This way you could have Stephanie retain, and you could still go back to Jordan. You could still go back to Julia. I think maybe the 4-way was a way to hide an injury or to, keep some of these girls strong. But yeah, I thought it was good stuff. I mean, the fans were chanting women's wrestling as soon as this thing got going. So I thought it came off great. And then Obafemi defeats Javon Evans and Trick Williams in the main event. It's probably the match of the night. I thought this was great stuff. Great main event. Tremendous athleticism. Just high-powered offense from all these guys. Great execution. Just had a little bit of everything. The blending of Javon Evans' athleticism with the strength and power of Oba and Trick was a sight to see. So yeah. I thought the NXT show was great. I do think the Roadblock show, from start to finish, just had more attractive matches, and I think it had a hotter atmosphere. But yeah, always nice to see NXT finally gain some momentum. And really, I think this is probably like the first time that you could say where they upstaged WWE like on a big weekend. Just some quick thoughts on Joey Janela's spring break. We actually do have an attendance here, 1,733. Almost, they said 2,000 on commentary. I guess Sabu is going to get a lot of the credit. Wasn't really a big fan of the show. I thought the show was hit or miss. There was definitely some disappointing stuff on here. The opener was the GCW tag title match. Alec Price is out there. Jordan Oliver returns. Cole Roderick is injured. And, Jordan Oliver is, the replacement there. And they actually defeat Violence is Forever for the tag titles in a very, very quick match. It wasn't bad, but Jordan Oliver used to team up with Nick Wayne, the East-West Express. So, it was a big deal. If you were a fan of Nick Wayne over the years. Next up, we had a 6-man tag featuring the La Familia Wagner family going up against the Los Desperados. So in the match, one of the Wagners actually unmasked here. It's almost like the veterans versus the younger guys. I thought it was an okay tag. I think this was good stuff. This is definitely one of the funner matches of the night. But hey, man, I think I've personally found it very difficult. I think to get into a lot of the lucha stuff. This weekend more so than some of the other weekends. I don't know why. Maybe it's just an age thing, or maybe it's a burnout thing. Megan Bayne actually defeats Bozilla. Yeah, the Bozilla name, I'm never going to get used to it. But yeah, so you got to see Megan Bayne at Dynasty have a great match with Toni Storm. And she's able to defeat Bozilla, who's really like even bigger than Megan Bayne. So you can see how Megan actually performs against a bigger girl here. I definitely think it was one of the better things of the night. Megan Bayne is definitely a star. So definitely check that out. Zack Sabre Jr. One Call Manders was disappointing. It just didn't get enough time to deliver. It's not that it was bad. It just had a very quick finish with Zack. Zack was just getting pounded and chopped, and then all of a sudden he hit him with the European clutch, and then game over. The best wrestler on the show is in somewhat of a filler match. So it kind of brought the show down. Like I said, Atticus Cougar and Fuego del Sol, I thought it had a good story. It was GCW career versus a Mask anything goes match. So Del Sol's career, Mask is on the line. Cougar's career is on the line. But yeah, Del Sol can go on the mic. He knows how to speak English very well. And I thought you had some great stuff here, in the build-up here with Atticus Cougar really, sticking the dagger into Del Sol about, being insecure and, not having the balls to unmask. And it does happen here. So it was a fun match. I think there was probably too much interference from, the fatter dudes. They were both friends with fat guys that interfered. So I thought that took away from the match a little bit. All right, next up, you have Matt Tremont taking on Minoru Suzuki. I couldn't get into this. I thought this was in a rough spot. Matt Tremont is very fat as well, but, he's not afraid to bleed. So it's definitely a good matchup. Suzuki can get down and dirty. Honestly, I got to say, Suzuki's match against the doll, from DDT was actually more interesting than this and more entertaining. Suzuki actually worked really well with, I'm going to butcher the name of the doll, but you know what I'm talking about. Yoko Hiro, I think that's the name of the doll. But yeah, Suzuki actually worked. He actually did a good job. It was actually a funny match, and it was interesting. But the match against Tremont, the crowd kind of went through a rough stretch at this point. Even Masha Slamovich and Suzuki, it was just kind of forgettable. I mean, it was solid for what it was. Masha actually retains the JCW title. I think she's going to be taking on Jonathan Gresham. They're going to have her fight guys. They have her fight guys a lot in GCW, but the Suzuki match, it's definitely not on the level of, some of Masha's other matches. Masha is going to be taking on, I believe, Tessa Blanchard, at the TNA pay-per-view. So I think that's probably the thing most people should be looking forward to. Next up, Gabe Kidd takes on Mance Warner. And a crazy match. The squirting of the blood from Mance Warner was crazy, but a good weekend for Gabe Kidd. I think Gabe Kidd's got a ton of potential. He's had a great year. To beat Kenny Omega, and then to kind of defeat Josh Barnett in convincing fashion. And then he gets another big win over Mance Warner, and just a bloody slugfest right here. That was definitely one of the better things of the show. But I just think the crowd was fucking just dead at that point. The Senior Scramble, really not worth talking about here. So Ricky Morton, I believe it's Ricky Morton's son, Kerry Morton, comes down and just bashes all the legends. George South, Mike Jackson, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, Damian 666. He's getting on the mic. Very reminiscent of that guy from AEW, what's his name, Lambert. Kind of like that style of promo, where he's just burying the veterans, and eventually he gets pinned. That's how it lasts right there. So Sabu taking on Joey Janela in the main event here, the no rope barbed wire match. I wasn't really, feeling it. I think it was cool. They showed a ton of the build up here with Joey persevering through the, the torn, triceps or bicep. I think it was torn triceps. Apparently Sabu did not show up to the GCW Hall of Fame to receive his plaque. He ends up getting the plaque at the end of this thing. So definitely had a lot of good build-up. They built it up for months. They showed every single promo that Joey Janela did. They basically just showed here as they were setting up the ring. I got to say this about Sabu. It's not the Sabu of old, but it's the old Sabu. But he did take some incredible bumps onto the barbed wire. He went headfirst into like the spider or like the barbed wire spider web. So that was really, really cool. I mean, he definitely looked like he was going to get ripped open a couple of times. I mean, Janela took, a beating. There was some cool chair sequences. Bill Alfonso comes out. He takes a big bump. Sandman comes out to the Metallica theme. That ate up like 10 minutes of the match, what felt like. And then, Sabu actually hugs Janela before he pins him. And yeah, I mean, I think I wasn't crazy about the match. I mean, there was definitely some bloody and some crazy moments. Both guys, took some nasty bumps into the barbed wire. I mean, definitely. But really, the post match is really interesting. It seems like they made up. Joey actually said that, Sabu is on his Mount Rushmore and is his favorite wrestler of all time. So, yeah, I mean, it kind of had me thinking of the Triple H quote. Triple H actually said you could tell a lot about a guy based on who, he grew up watching or who his favorite wrestler is. So if your favorite wrestler is Sabu, what does that tell you? Yeah, so when you see Joey Janela's style, it definitely does make sense. So it was definitely cool. It's supposed to be Sabu's last match. So if you're a Sabu fan, I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's definitely not a bad match. I think we've seen, worse, retirement matches. But yeah, I think it's more for the ECW fans. It's more for fans of nostalgia. I'm a huge RVD fan. I really love Sabu, but in this spot, it just, I just don't think it was like for me. Like I can't say like I'm a huge like diehard ECW fan of just like every single thing that went on in the company. But one thing you can't knock Sabu on his effort. He's always going to bust his ass and give a great effort, no matter what. So I think the Code of Honor and the Aftermath was like the highlight of the match for me. All right, the Dragon Gate USA Rebirth show. This happened very early, very, very early in the week. I just kind of put this on in the morning, when I was getting stuff ready, and just threw it on in the background, and it was cool. It went by really quickly. I'm not going to say it's worth checking out. There's really nothing on the show that I would recommend, but it was really, really fun to see though. I think for me, like the highlights of the show was the promos. I would say Rich Swann had an incredible tag match with Willie Mack here. I thought he blended in really well with I think it was Alec Price. Rich Swann and Alec Price, worked magic in that match. So Rich Swann has gotten back in shape. He's definitely rejuvenated. He's still young. He's only like 34 years old. He actually cut a promo here talking about his older Dragon Gate USA stuff. So yeah, Rich Swann, definitely the surprise, I think, of the weekend for Dragon Gate USA in the ring. At least from the American side of things, I'll say that. And I thought Matt Seidel's promo was really good. I thought it was really heartfelt. Like he really did a better job of articulating more than anyone maybe ever of just, wrestling in front of smaller crowds and just stressing the point, just don't dwell on, not being in front of bigger crowds and just wrestle for the people that came to see you. And it was really good. I enjoyed, Matt Seidel's promo. He's one of these, I mean, he's a lot older now, but Matt Seidel's like one of those kids or one of those guys that just never ages. Like he looks like that. The main event definitely got some criticism. I think in this match, the Zebrats team led by Shun Skywalker, I think the storylines and the monotony of the, slowing it down and everything, I think it really took away from the main event. It just never really got going. You did have, Yokosuka definitely had like some really good moments here where you almost have like that Dragon Gate feel. Dragon Kid's a little bit older now. Yamato definitely has like an older body, but he's still good. I think the main event was okay. I think the Rich Swann and Willie Mack, triple threat tag match was definitely the highlight of that show. But really, when we're looking at Dragon Gate USA, the Gate of Revolution show was incredible. So I would say this: just check out everything from the Dragon Kid and Ultimo Dragon match on. The Dragon Kid and Ultimo Dragon are very old, but they can still go. They definitely had like a solid match here. Against Yokosuka and Ho Ho Lun. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. But I would definitely say watch that and just watch the rest of the show. This was one of the best stretches of the weekend because then you had the Lucha Solos match against the Panthers, the Los Hermanos, also known as Arrow Panther and Fight Panther Jr. That match is incredible. And then Yamato actually takes on Rich Swann. Ended up being a non-title match for the Open the Freedom Gate title. Swann ends up losing to Yamato, but it was good though. Swann put up a hell of a fight. Yamato could still go. And then the 6-man tag at the end, I thought it was awesome. So definitely check that out. I thought Skywalker, even though he's a heel, he definitely had some awesome moments there. So this Dragon Gate PWR show, I would definitely recommend checking it out. I mean, there was only like 250 people there. They ran at the same time as Spring Break. It was actually at the meet in Las Vegas. So yeah, definitely check that out. It's not part of the collective, but it was on Triller as part of Mania weekend, if that makes any sense. All right, so just some thoughts on some of the rest of the shows from the collective here. So the first one I'll start with is the WrestleCon Mark Hitchcock Memorial Super Show. Very negatively received. I didn't see the whole show, but the Mickie James match was not well received. I saw some of the Butterbean against Suzuki match. It just felt like it was a mess, to be completely honest with you. But the TMDK tag match with Zack Sabre Jr., Shane Hayes, and Bad Dude Tito taking on Flip Gordon's team, it was a solid match. I think the Flip Gordon booing kind of brought it down a bit. But other than that, if you could look past that, I thought you had a great main event there. The Matt Riddle match against Matt Mako. I just thought it was extremely average. I just think Riddle's stock has kind of dropped. I mean, it wasn't bad. It just, I just don't think it's gonna, get any attention. The Ninja Mac match against Masquerade Dorada, I thought it was solid. I just had a tough time getting into it. I don't know why, but it was definitely good. The Lucha match, the 10-man tag, I thought it had some really, really cool stuff. Like there was a suplex on a shitload of guys here. It was one of the best spots of the weekend. But if you haven't seen it yet, it's one of the best things on the show. The Team Malafama taking on Team Gravity, actually featuring Gravity is actually on that team. But it was good though. That definitely had to be one of the funner matches of the weekend. But for the most part, I would definitely say that this WrestleCon Mark Hitchcock Memorial Show, this just came off to me like it was one of the weaker, WrestleCon shows that they've done in quite some time. Just some final thoughts on Bloodsport. I thought Bloodsport was good. I think if you look at each and every match, there's not a lot of matches that, over-delivered, especially like Pete Dunne and Timothy Thatcher. But I think the show as a whole, was just a lot of fun to sit through. I just thought you had a great variety of women. You had a great variety of just, regular matchups. And, I think Zach and Jonathan Gresham was one of the best Bloodsport matches ever, one of the best matches of the weekend. I think Gabe Kidd and Josh Barnett, I think if you look at it in terms of just Gabe's maturity and him studying Josh and not letting Josh, suplex him or, tap him out, I just think that the ending was actually pretty sweet when you look back on it. That front face guillotine face lock, transition into the power driver knockout. But, I think when you see Josh Barnett in the main event, you just expect, you would expect a little bit more drama, definitely. But, some of the criticism here, maybe too many WWE names, it gives them something to do. I mean, look, Natty Neidhart, for as much of a legend as she is, I mean, you can't fit her into WrestleMania at this stage. Same thing with Pete Dunne. I mean, Pete Dunne definitely deserves to be on premium live events, but you couldn't find the spot for him, so you put him against Timothy Thatcher. I think one of the criticisms was, you had a chance to book, a dream match like Pete Dunne and Zack Sabre Jr. and you don't do it. I think a lot of politics, come into play here. It's almost like WWE has a say in terms of the booking. So, maybe that takes away from it. But I thought Zach and Jonathan Gresham was a hell of a matchup. But still, it didn't even hit me until, reading some of the reviews that it had already happened. I forgot it already happened, and it already happened like 6 times. So, but, that's a combination where I could watch the two guys wrestle over and over again. And it never happened in Bloodsport. So to me, that was the selling point of it. But yeah, I thought Bloodsport was okay. I thought the show was fun to sit through. But, from a match quality standpoint, though, it's probably one of the weaker Bloodsports. Let me touch on the DDT show. DDT is just not for me. I'll definitely say that. But I'll admit to you, the Minoru Suzuki match against Yoshihiko, the doll, it was actually entertaining. Especially all the blood. But Suzuki was actually great at it. He actually worked well. Yeah. It came off great. This was definitely, this almost made my list. I thought it was that good. Takeshita takes on Mao. If you love Takeshita, you'll love that match. So once again, Takeshita, main event's a DDT show, and it does deliver. I thought the Shinya Aoki match against Timothy Thatcher was really good. It was solid. It was just a little bit unsatisfying, when you look at the finish and everything. Nick Wayne, I didn't see the whole show, but Nick Wayne is on a tag match. It seemed like it came off all right. But, the DDT shows are extremely weird to talk about because it's a mix. I mean, when you think of DDT, you think of guys like Kota Ibushi, Kenny Omega, El Generico, but also you just get a lot of variety, and I think a lot of it is just trying to cater to some of the comedy stuff. So it's definitely not for everybody, but definitely I think those last three matches were definitely solid. And they also did they also did a DDT, TJPW, and a GCW super show here. I wasn't really crazy about this, the last time they did one of these. I would say that the main event is definitely good. Mao actually teams up with the doll, Yoshihiko, and, they take on Alec Price and Jimmy Lloyd, Jack Cartwheel, and Kazuma Sumi. I think it's an underrated match. I think this was good stuff. I saw that. That was very entertaining. Takeshita teams up with Masha Slamovich to take on Yamashita and Shinya Aoki. It was definitely a solid match. But hey, they actually do these super shows, with all three of these promotions every year. I mean, I don't really have much to say about that. I did see the double main event. I thought it was okay for what it's worth. There was a TJPW show. Let me see this. TJPW live in Las Vegas. Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling. I kind of have this on. I did check out Suzume and Jada Stone. Good stuff. Jada Stone is a really good black girl. She's really good. Suzume was sweet as hell. This was definitely a good matchup. It's a solid show. It's definitely a solid show. I did see Masha Slamovich's match against Watanabe. I saw the ending. It was okay. And Mizuki taking on Yamashita in the main event. They actually did get time. I think Yamashita had an incredible weekend. I think she's got an incredible spinning heel kick. She's got a dope moveset. She's very feisty. Her and Mizuki definitely had a good match. The Princess of Princess title match. Mizuki goes over, but I think Yamashita ended up being one of the the under the radar MVPs, especially for the women all weekend. So definitely check that out. You also get to see Max the Impaler on here. So yeah, I mean, the TJPW show, it was pretty good. I didn't get to see the Stardom show. Stardom is not really my thing. Japanese women's wrestling. I know it's very, very good, very, very skilled. It's just not my thing. But I gotta say, I think the show was hit or miss. Though I think some of these matches, I think some of them got monotonous. But at the same time, there was some sleepers on here. The Suzume match against Jada Stone in the main event, I would definitely worth checking them out. And then DEFY does a Living Proof show. Shout out to Inspector Deck there. That verse is underrated from Cream. Inspector Deck gets a lot of love for that Triumph verse. But man, how many classic lines does that Cream verse have from Inspector Deck? Give it up to me while I be living proof to teach the truth to the young black youth. And I don't know. To me, this just comes off like Living Proof is the name of the show is inspired by that. They also had a whole song by Group Home called Living Proof. But DEFY does Living Proof here. They had the Streets of Rage show in Seattle earlier in the week with Zack Sabre Jr. and Timothy Thatcher, which was great. I thought that was the better show. The Streets of Rage used to be like a Nintendo game, Super Nintendo game. I think you had like Rival Turf, Streets of Rage. I definitely used to have Streets of Rage. I just can't remember it that well, but it was definitely a Nintendo game. But Living Proof, I saw Evil and Michael Oku. It was okay. That's all I can pretty much say about it. Evil actually goes over Michael Oku. I saw the triple threat tag match. with Judas and Icarus. And Judas, Icarus, and Travis Williams, the Sinner and Saint team. They actually beat a Dragon Gate team at Streets of Rage, and they defend the belts here. They're okay. They're a little bit heelish. The Dragon Gate team, Susumu Yokosuka is actually in this match as well, and they take on the Lycos Gym of Key Lycos and Key Lycos 2. That match was just okay. This show was just okay. I mean, I couldn't get into the Rock and Roll Express match. I did get to see the Kenta match. Kenta actually defeats Mance Warner. They go about 13 minutes. I think he had some good moments. They got onto the stage and they got chairs, and Kenta and Mance slapped the shit out of each other. Kenta does win with the go to sleep. There's actually fuck CM Punk chants to Kenta, which he looked actually happy about. I'm not sure why. CM Punk loves Kenta. And, that's one of the reasons why he does the go to sleep. But yeah, I just can't say that Kenta, matched Mance Warner's intensity here. I just think Mance had better matches throughout the weekend. This is very similar to Kenta's other matches. It was just kind of there. And then the main event, Clark Connors actually defeats El Fantasmo and Man Like De Rice in a three-way match. So I thought it was okay. I think Clark Connors and El Fantasmo, looked okay in this match. It was a solid match. It just never got up to that next level. I think this DEFY show was extremely average. Not necessarily in a good way, but they definitely deserve to be part of the collective. But I think the important thing to say about DEFY is the place that they run shows in Seattle, that feels like their home turf. To me, that's their Reseda. When they ran this show in the collective, it just felt like another show. And you would think bringing in Kenta would create a huge buzz, but it just doesn't in today's day and age. I did get to see some of the ID tournament. I just kind of had it on while I was in the middle of this long phone conversation. Then I was like, let me just put on the ID tournament so I know what it looks like. Let me see the WWE ID. All right, there we go. Okay, let me see. All right, so they did two of them. They did one from GCW, one from SSW. This tournament is going to go on a long time. So I was assuming that they were going to wrap this up this weekend or this week. It doesn't look like that is happening. It's very similar to Evolve in terms of the way it feels. I think a lot of these guys actually wrestle for Evolve. I did get to see the Jordan Oasis match. He actually defeats Freedom Ramsey in the first match. Wasn't really impressed by the match. I was more impressed with Jordan Oasis' mic skills in the promo afterwards. Atticus Cougar's in a triple threat here. He actually loses to Ice Williams. That's another match I just had on. I couldn't really, get a feel for it. Marcus Mathers had a good weekend. He opened up the Dragon Gate USA show. He goes over Sam Holloway here. This is a no disqualification match. He actually wins with the 450. So I think Marcus Mathers definitely has some potential. This tournament is actually double elimination, so it's going to go really long. And then the main event, they actually had a 6-man tag. You got to see Jack Cartwheel. Cappuccino Jones was okay. He kind of reminded me of Ronda Truth Killings a little bit. That kid, what's his name? Sean Legacy. I got to say, Sean Legacy looked really good. So if you haven't seen Sean Legacy yet, he looked like execution-wise and just the presence really got my attention in the 6-man tag. But ultimately, this just felt like an indie tryout show. I wouldn't say it's worth checking out. I just kind of had it on, so I can't really do an official review of it. Okay, so this is just my final thoughts on the whole weekend. For the most part, I'm a little bit underwhelmed with the weekend, especially the collective. I just think we're at a stage right now where, because of NXT, because of AEW, it's very difficult to get over the marquee talent, that you want to see. Even the Zack Sabre Jr. stuff, I thought it was good, but it just didn't spark, I think, the interest, you would envision. So definitely, I think the collective, the GCW stuff, the Bloodsport stuff, it's pretty much at the same level that it was at 2 years ago. But, I definitely think there's some interesting things to check out. I thought it was a good weekend for Dragon Gate. Say what you want about Dragon Gate. That show is definitely going to go under the radar. But I think the spring break show was extremely underwhelming. If you're a Sabu fan, I would definitely say check it out. But I just think the supporting cast on that show, it just could have been a little bit better. I just felt like, considering how many people came to the show, there was somewhat of a disconnection with everybody away from ECW. I mean, that's just how it kind of came off to me. I think NXT had a good weekend. I think AEW, definitely had a good week. I think AEW stole the week, to be honest with you. They had one of the best Dynamites ever. I think the venue that they ran in Boston was excellent in terms of crowd reaction. So, shout out to AEW. I was in favor of not even paying attention to AEW during WrestleMania weekend. That's kind of the approach that I've had over the last couple of years. But you always think back to the Clash of Champions at WrestleMania 4 and how Sting and Flair did a huge rating, during WrestleMania 4. So, you do want to kind of, make a name for yourself at the same time. And you got to give AEW credit. People were asking me to review Dynamite, and then you hear about the buzz that Takeshita and Ospreay generated, and not just that, you just had a great show overall. Even the MJF stuff with the Hurt Syndicate was definitely interesting. You had Josh Alexander actually joining the Don Callis family. So, it's a great pickup for AEW to have Josh Alexander. He had a really good match with, Hangman Page. So, yeah, Dynamite was great. Collision even had some, quality stuff on it as well, with, Claudio snapping after a loss to Adam Cole. So definitely, give AEW credit. I think, the Collision show was good, not great. I think Dynamite, ended up being, one of the best Dynamites ever. Maybe one of the best Dynamite matches, and one of the best feel-good segments to close the AEW show ever. With the Death Riders, actually losing, the trios, tag team titles. So, give AEW a lot of credit. I just think the GCW stuff, it wasn't bad. I just don't have a lot of confidence in, anybody being that interested in what went on this weekend. On the WWE side of things, I think WrestleMania was good. I definitely think it was good. Let me just end it talking about WrestleMania. I think looking back on it, I think night one was fine. If you want to argue that maybe there should have been, some matches that really weren't WrestleMania worthy, I have no problem with that. I definitely think maybe the New Day match could have been cut. I definitely think, Jade's match against Naomi, I think that being on WrestleMania was probably a tough sell for some people. But say what you want about the show. I think Charlotte and, Charlotte's match against Tiffany Stratton, it was definitely one of the more disappointing matches of the weekend. Considering how much attention, some of the microphone work got. But say what you want about the main event, man. The main event was great. Main event was awesome. I was really happy for Punk. This is what I wanted to say. I think, I was really happy for Punk. I think, him persevering through the injury to get back, I really rooted for him. I rooted for him hard. I was really praying that he wouldn't, get hurt again or, start fighting with people again and get suspended again. Rollins even said, this is his last chance. But, I think it was a great bounce back for Punk. And I think what really solidified, this spot for him is, over delivering in that Netflix debut. I even said it. I said it. Kawhi Leonard has not faced, that kind of pressure, in that building yet. And congrats to Kawhi. He's looking better than ever. And, finally, it looks like the Clippers are going to, make a run this time with a healthy Kawhi. Maybe Paul George was the weak link. But, hey, I was happy that Punk persevered. The WrestleMania main event thing is definitely interesting for Punk. I remember I think it was at Death Before Dishonor against Aries, Prazak was saying on commentary, one of these days I could see CM Punk actually wrestling Triple H in the main event of WrestleMania. And yeah, I mean, that's never going to happen. But the fact that he main events it under Triple H's regime, that was kind of like a full circle moment. And it was cool because when Punk came out, it felt like the negativity kind of washed away, especially when you see some of the that fire burns and some of the the original promos when it felt like Punk was a little bit more innocent. And yeah, man, it was definitely a great moment for Punk. I think Heyman siding with Seth, it was definitely the right call. It came off a little bit predictable, but I definitely think it was the right call looking back on it. And obviously I just think the match was definitely incredible. But moving on to night 2, yeah, I think the Logan match against AJ definitely underperformed, looking back on it. So I could totally understand it if you were a little bit bored, with the Logan. So hey, maybe it'll send Logan a message that he needs to step things up. But yeah, I just really I wished him and AJ just could have had a better match. But I didn't think the match was bad though. I still think it had some good moments. But I just think more than anything, it just feels like it's tougher nowadays to keep people engaged, especially when you have to follow, some really, really good matches. I think night 2 got off to an awesome start. I think that show was just rocking until the Randy Orton match with Joe Henry. But on to the main event with Cena and Cody. The Travis Scott thing. I think it really is, one of the worst calls in WrestleMania history. I mean, it might be one of the worst decisions that they've ever made in a WrestleMania main event. Since the WrestleMania 9 fiasco with Hogan, winning the belt. And it's funny that it's Las Vegas, so it's almost like maybe Las Vegas is cursed with bad decision making in the main event of WrestleMania. I mean, the obvious thing to say is so Rock actually said that he likes Travis Scott. So his answer was he liked the Travis Scott idea. There was a few things he would have cleaned up about the booking of Cody and Cena, going into the main event. But he likes the Travis Scott idea. He said that he likes it because Travis Scott is a fan. And, one of these days he's hoping to train with Booker T. So that's the reason. It's a little bit of a weak reasoning. The funny thing is, when you go back to Elimination Chamber, I was very negative on Travis Scott being out there. I said, man, there's no way like a rapper should be involved with that. But I think in the heat of the moment, we were so like in shock and in awe of Cena turning heel that you just were just like, all right, if this is what it takes, like whatever the fuck. Like I think everybody had that mentality. So I don't think anyone really thought like we would see Travis Scott again at WrestleMania. And the funny thing about the Travis Scott situation is he hasn't been involved on TV with storylines. You haven't seen him without the sunglasses on, cutting promos or anything. So it's a little bit of a weird situation. And I think the logical answer to like why does he have to be involved, I just think it's pressure. I think there's a lot of pressure to appeal to the younger hip hop generation. I think when you look at both main events, the interesting thing about both main events is you got a heel going over on night 1 in Seth Rollins, and then you got Cena going over as a heel on night 2. So I think that puts a lot of pressure on everybody. And then when you look at both main events, it's you got 2 white guys in both main events that are pushing 50 years old. So maybe there's like a sense of urgency to try to appeal to like the younger, hip hop generation. I have no idea. Either way, I thought it was the wrong call. I was pissed off in the heat of the moment. I still think having The Rock in that spot was unnecessary. I kind of agree with The Rock. He kind of said, the final boss's work is already done. He didn't need to be involved. We could always go back to the Cody storyline, down the road. He has other obligations. So I would agree. I think relying on The Rock at this stage is just a mistake. I think that's been one of the problems with WWE. We're so reliant on, banking on Rock, defending the title, staying with the company, especially WrestleMania 29. I was really hoping Rock was going to stay champion for a while and have one last great run. And I just think it hurts the company when Rock shows up for WrestleMania and then he's gone. So I totally had no interest in seeing The Rock. I understand it if some people wanted to see him or whatever, but fuck it, man. I'm glad that didn't happen. So I think in retrospect, I think I would have been fine with the finish. Just if Travis Scott didn't come out. I just think it delegitimizes it. Sean even said that Triple H is doing, a great job of maintaining the integrity of professional wrestling while taking it into another galaxy. He said that. So it's almost like it put a damper on what should have been a great weekend for Triple H. I mean, I really felt like it did. But, do I think this is one of the worst main events in WrestleMania history? No, there's no way. But, if you're an old timer, if you're like a wrestling traditionalist, I think this will drive you crazy. But I'm looking at the workers in the match, Cena and Cody. It definitely got a great reaction. I thought it was a fun match. They didn't have the best of chemistry, but, the match itself was good. I thought it was going fine. I think if Travis Scott doesn't come down and Cena does that finish, I think more people are a little bit accepting to it. But I also think we have to keep in mind, Cena is a heel. He wants to ruin wrestling. And I think that approach is definitely going to affect, some of these finishes. I think you have to keep in mind, like one of the side effects of praying that Cena is going to be a heel is that, heels usually don't have great finishes to their matches. And it's true. Like when you go back to WrestleMania 17, no, I definitely think like their 17 main event, Austin and Rock, that finish of Austin swinging the chairs is definitely the better finish. But at the time, though, a lot of people hated the idea of Vince, being with Austin, and definitely the heel turn overshadowed the quality of that match. But when you look at Austin's finishes as a heel, people hated the Backlash finish. They hated the Judgment Day finish. The King of the Ring finish was not great. The finish at SummerSlam ended up being a DQ. So that was not a great finish, even though it was a classic match. The finish at Unforgiven with Austin holding the the ring apron. When you look back on that, that's a cheap finish. RVD basically botches the stunner at No Mercy. So once again, that's a bad finish. I think the Survivor Series finish is great. Rock goes over. The Vengeance 2001 finish with Booker T running in to screw Austin, that's a bad finish. So even going back to 2001, almost every single pay-per-view, maybe besides the Rumble and besides Survivor Series, had a bad finish. But it doesn't really, take away from the year for me. Like, I don't look back at 2001 and say, oh, it was a bad year because you had a bad finish in every match. So I think that might be one of the things that comes with the heel Cena is you're going to get some, weird finishes. And Cena even said, the hard part is over. Now I don't even have to wrestle. But hey, I want to credit Cena and Cody. I thought it was a good feud. And I got to credit Cody, too. I think the title reign was phenomenal. Him going overseas, him defending the belts. Every time they started booing Cody on a live promo, it always felt like Cody got the momentum back. It felt like he stuck some daggers into Cena with the "you can't wrestle" comments. You're paler than Sting at Starrcade '97. Was definitely a highlight. Cena even had some great lines about, I make empires for billionaires. You just steal money from their children. So we could get into it all day. I definitely think Cena and Cody deserve a lot of credit, for the build up. And, I think that the match while it was going, it was good. I mean, how many times have we seen like awful, like WrestleMania main events that just have dead crowds? And it wasn't that at all. Like it really wasn't. But, It's a weird finish, man. I mean, it's definitely weird. I wish I had harped on it a little bit harder at Elimination Chamber about the Travis Scott thing, but I think everybody was in such shock that it finally happened that you were just like, oh, fuck, like, whatever. But overall, man, I think WrestleMania weekend, you know, on the WWE side of it, I think it was pretty memorable. I think, you know, both main events definitely, you know, I think sparked a lot of interest going into it. I think Cena and Cody, it's a solid WrestleMania main event with a bad finish. Is it disappointing? Yes, it's definitely disappointing. Is it worse than Miz Cena? Is it worse than Hogan Sid? Is it worse than Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam Bigelow? The answer would be no. But yeah, WrestleMania definitely gave us some bangers. I would say the triple threats were the highlights of WWE and NXT. The triple threat matches over-delivered. So say what you want about those. You know, the rest of the weekend, the GCW collective stuff, it's just like, I don't know what to really say about it. I didn't even get to TNA yet. You know, TNA ran Unbreakable. I didn't get to see Unbreakable. They did two triple threats, and then the winners faced each other in another triple threat. And I think he actually had Steve Maclin going over AJ Francis to win the international championship. So you had that. You also had like Sami Callihan, you know, going up against Mance Warner in the most brutal match of the night. And then you had Joe Henry in a mixed intergender tag match against Frankie Kazarian's team. But yeah, I mean, I think the Unbreakable show was okay, but it was just kind of, you know, kind of a way to set up the Rebellion show. I think Rebellion definitely looks like a good show. I'm going to pass on it, but you got Rebellion. And then the Supercard of Honor show is going to be on May 2nd. That's still kind of coming into effect. But yeah, we'll probably get to see Bandito defend the belt. We'll get to see Nick Wayne defend his TV title. So looking forward to that. But yeah, Rebellion definitely looks like a good show. I just think it's in a rough spot. I'm just a little bit burned out from you know, this whole week. But overall, man, let me just end it right there. I'm kind of glad. I have one of those feelings where like I'm glad it's finally over. Like everything was good and everything. Not the best WrestleMania weekend, not the worst, but I'm just kind of glad that it's over. So let me know how you guys feel about the weekend. And I'm out. All right.